So, you know, it's there's not too many crazy things that you can do with your lineups right now. It feels with the meta being soft. That's why I like the fact that Monsanto has brought like a kind of a different take on Pain Warrior. No Hands, though, being a Pain Warrior connoisseur himself, having almost single-handedly, you know, created the archetype in the last set. A lot of respect for it, so he goes ahead and bans it away.
I agree. It's okay to show some healthy respect for decks that might give you problems, but yeah, let's go into game number 1 here in just a moment. No Hands with the mulligan sees the opportunity to get early game presence against the mage, and it'll end up being okay. But the problem is that a lot of times mage has so many good disruption tools and so much good tempo, especially if you end up setting up a comeback opportunity and a mage blows it all out with devolving missiles. But looks like Monsanto's going to start things off not on the coin this time, but having a lot of cheap spells for the Sorcerer's Apprentice to pick up, so it's a pretty solid opening hand here for Monsanto.
Yeah, pretty decent. I'd say a decent hand for both players. No Hands has a lot of ways to fight for early game board, but you know, that's just one step in the very complicated and ever-changing puzzle that is trying to defeat Tempo Mage as priest.
On wings of destruction they come.
I think I equate it to doing a like 3,000 piece jigsaw puzzle on a picture that changes every 30 minutes. That's what it's like trying to beat Tempo Mage sometimes as control priest. You felt like you figured it out. You got all your pieces lined up and sectioned out. All it takes now is just you need the time to execute putting those pieces in place, and then the picture moves, and those pieces that you've been you know, organizing and collecting and sorting, you know, for the last 3 days, they don't matter anymore, and now you need completely different pieces, and they're all jumbled up and messed up. And then sometimes there's like this 30-year-old guy that breaks into your house and kicks your puzzle and steals a couple pieces. And that's Solarian Prime.
Yeah.
And then you can't even complete the puzzle.
Solarian Prime sees you making a puzzle, frustrated with its own puzzle that's not making any progress, comes over your table and flips it over.
Yes.
TJ actually has 2 Solarian Primes about 10 feet away from him.
I keep them further than that when I'm casting. They're about 50 feet away from me.
Okay, they sound like they're 10 feet away from me.
Yeah, sometimes they do, but it's, I don't know, the volume was otherworldly. I wonder if you just want to like tempo out a Mind Flayer here onto like a Violet Spellwing. It's like a okay way to be like, all right, if you devolving missiles this, I'm not too upset about it because it was just a Violet Spellwing. Ooh.
Okay.
We're missing a payoff
very
card.
Close to a pop-off turn. Is it a pop-off turn, TJ? It's got so many cheap spells, but he's also running out of time.
I don't know if he's running out of time. You got a lot of time in this matchup to find what you need.
No, I meant turn time. The turn time.
Turn time. Okay. I thought you meant like running out of time in the matchup, and I was like, ooh.
No.
Yeah, Dan,
5 seconds passed, TJ. That's like 65 seconds to get the animations off. Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Good. I was about to say, Dan, I don't know if I necessarily agree with how you like to play Tempo Mage, but I like it. It's turn 4. I'm running out of time. I gotta beat this guy.
True. Although, if you think about it, we're all running out of time.
Yeah. True. So true.
Another Ray's dead, so No Hands can go for more of these clerics. Oh, and also the Wisp. The Wisp. Can't forget about that.
Yes.
Okay, so this time he finds Draconic Studies if he wants to pull it out. Could also use the Apotheosis, but I like these studies a lot better. It tends to lead him to actually having a tempo play instead of just waiting and stalling. So he finds the Crimson Hothead. He's just going to go ahead and finish out his turn, gathering more resources.
There's gotta be something cool he can do with a Wisp. There's gotta be.
Yeah. Like...
I'm looking at this Wisp, and this Wisp, it just has some type of greater purpose.
Yeah, you might be reading a little too much into that, but I'm with you. Evocation coming up next.
Yep. He's got super payoff now. It only took him one turn to find both payoffs. Okay.
Almost all playables.
Yeah, all playables, but not necessarily like good playables, because ideally he wants to play Mana Cyclone and Mana Giant, but it doesn't look like that's possible this turn. And if given the choice, I'd rather play Mana Cyclone. Because if he plays Mana Giant, the Mana Giant gets dealt with. He's done. And if he plays Mana Cyclone, that Mana Cyclone is also a spell or a card that didn't start in his deck because he got it from Fauna Power, if I remember correctly. So if he gets one other spell that's cheap enough... Oh no, it wasn't. That was the natural one. What? I'm crazy. He can still do it with Ray of Frost if he wants to, but I think he can just wait.
Yeah, I mean, he also has the Elemental Allies up, so the moment he plays Mana Giant, he's going to refill his hand.
Ah, yeah, you're right.
So he's okay in terms of the resources. And now, No Hands.
Yeah,
Definitely wants to kill this Sorcerer's Apprentice. That can be done through the Holy Smite or the Wild Pyromancer. And then next turn, if he sees the big Mana Giant, he could potentially just Murazond while he has protected his life total.
I wonder.
I do think that's it.
Got a lot of health to work with here.
Got all that. Got all that value.
Oh, yeah.
Death Skimp. Wisp.
Oh, he's going. Okay. I guess I was thinking like, okay, maybe it's a mirror entity test. But at this point, it's like, whatever, just play it.
Right. There's no real big value of it. Like mirror entity would have to be something that Monsanto gets off of Tome until like you're rarely gonna ever choose mirror entity. I guess it could come off of Evocation as well.
Whew. More gas.
That's nice.
Discover an Astromancer Solarian here, and then Cram Session.
Someday I'll be just like
Oh! Okay. Didn't expect this.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur. Time runs out on me.
Wow. Another Ray of Frost.
I feel like that's unnecessary. Yeah, I want to go for the... Ugh. Okay, so the Sorcerer's Apprentice is threatening, but now he doesn't have any more. I guess it still allowed him to fight for tempo. It wasn't like he wasted it, but like again, I'm so protective of my Sorcerer Apprentice with no payoff cards. Maybe too much so, because I feel like I run into that situation a lot where I'm pseudo criticizing players for being too aggressive with Sorcerer Apprentice, and if everybody's doing it and I'm the only one not doing it, maybe I'm the one that's wrong.
It's possible, but I think overall, right now, it just kind of shows you how much the Tempo Mage prioritizes just being able to dump these resources and get ahead onto the board. And I mean, play a Tempo style. It's not necessarily about like collecting a bunch of value, playing control, and like hoping that you land the Ashermancer Solarian, even though I'm sure that is important. Wow, No Hands takes the Ashermancer, which I think he would prefer one of the other two. The Sorcerer's Apprentice is obviously an enabler, but doesn't actually end up leading to anything meaningful. The mana discounts.
Yeah.
I guess he knows about the cheap spells, though, so maybe he is a little bit worried, because Monsanto could play his entire hand here.
Go all in. I feel like it's rare that it comes down to like this type of situation in Mage versus Priest, where like both players are out of stuff. Usually one player has stuff.
Someone's out on me.
Yeah, it's very rare that it comes down to a war of attrition like that, but Mage is pretty far ahead, so this is a pretty significant resource advantage. And No Hands has no minions. Nothing to stick.
Yeah.
And the diligence that Monsanto had to just kind of build up his board, get, these really powerful AoE sweeps and removal tools, has led him to be pretty far ahead to the point where No Hands is desperate to use the Wave of Apathy. That Conjurer's Calling picks up as an Alec here. And Monsanto, I mean, why not just go for the lethal anyways? He has to consider Soul Mirror. What ends up happening if his opponent has that Soul Mirror? What does it look like?
Yeah,
He does end up losing a pretty good portion of his board.
Yeah, I want to Conjurer's Calling the Proto Drake, actually.
Right. Because the other cards are semi-resilient against Soul Mirror.
Yeah, and the Proto Drake, you can get some crazy stuff like Antonitis. Just end the game on the spot. I guess he doesn't have to Conjurer's Calling at all, honestly. He can just ping. Because if Soul Mirror does come out, it's not clearing off his whole board. You Murzon, hope it hits the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and someone's a Doomsayer. Or itself, and someone's taunts, but
and that's
alas.
it. Monsanto takes the game and starts off the series on the right foot, being able to take down that Control Priest to make sure that No Hands was not able to really get off to a quick start. Stabilize the board state at all times, which I think is something that's really important because Priest is so good at leveraging it with their hero power and a bunch of buff cards. That's resulting in a Game 1 victory. I do anticipate Mage to be able to get that win, though. Mage seems to be well outfitted against a class like Priest, so it's not terribly surprising to see Mage do well against that class. The questions do loom roar around, like, how does Rogue and Demon Hunter fare this weekend? Because they are super popular to be classes to consider to be bringing. But yet at the same time, we do see them be sometimes, or specifically Rogue, be the weak points of certain lineups. And so when you do factor in that ban, we'll see if that ends up being the difference maker here in the series.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting because it feels like Tempo Mage, at least for the past couple days, has been consistently winning, right? Whereas the other decks feel like they're the ones that are struggling. So the players that have been banning Tempo Mage seem to have been being successful. But maybe a point to elaborate on a bit more at another time. Now it's time to move on to game number 2 of the series. Monsanto with the Soul Demon Hunter. And, pretty standard variation. We only really see like one or two cards different among almost every list. Monsanto opting for a Horde Pillager, one Horde Pillager, one Consume Magic. Horde Pillager may not be standard. Sometimes that's a Pen Flinger. But I feel like the Consume Magic has become more and more popular, and it might actually be in most, if not every single one of the Demon Hunter decks that we've seen, at least in Americas, throughout the playoff/relegation weekend. But NoHandsGamer going with the same deck, too. Got ourselves a good old Soul Demon Hunter mirror match. Kind of a weird matchup, honestly. There's not a lot of like crazy stuff that happens. Demon Hunter is one of the decks in the metagame right now where it is pretty straightforward. You're not operating with resources that are outside of your deck. You're just trying to maximize damage and maximize damage dealt, minimize damage taken. So that can sometimes be a fun game in itself, but as most kind of linear deck mirror matches go, there do tend to be some blowouts, right? Where, not one player just doesn't even stand a chance in the game because they, drew their cards in the wrong order or something like that. So you don't like to see those. You like to see the back and forth ones where each micro decision matters a ton. And you get to that last turn where, oh my gosh, he needs 1 damage off the top of his deck. Can he draw it? He does. Wah! And then they pop off. We all high five, and then
we all clap.
Go have a nice socially distanced dinner afterwards. But we can't always live in a perfect
Korean
world,
barbecue, maybe. That's apparently where we all go every single time.
I always veto it. I always do it
till the end of time.
Yeah.
Just messing. Korean barbecue, of course, is fantastic, and if you have never tried it, then you have never really lived. Really good analysis, I think, of overall like the kind of broad strokes that you're looking for as Demon Hunter, trying to get that early game damage. Very much a mid-range Hunter mirror dynamic as well, where like one player gets really far ahead, and it just feels like you're never in a position to actually take an aggressive stance to deal damage. So there's a tipping point of health that you have to be mindful of. I would say that number starts to be a little bit earlier than usual. I think a lot of times people used to say like if you cross the halfway point, you're like in that defensive stance. But I do feel like it's more about the difference in life total, and you start to worry about like the high teens, especially if your opponent's at full health and you're not really racing and they have weapons set up. So the explosiveness of Demon Hunter is even like scarier, right? Because they have the ability to discount things with Skull Gul'dan. I don't know, you spent some time talking about Consume Magic. I'm not sure if that's exactly a card that'll have a high impact in this matchup per se, but no. We'll see if they're able to collect enough of that early game tempo and value for it to not even really matter much.
It's actually the first time I've heard the Soul Demon Hunter mirror matchup compared to mid-range, the old school mid-range Hunter mirror matchup, but holy moly, is that accurate.
Wait, what? Really?
That's the first time.
TJ, I've been comparing it to it all season.
You not directly to me. Not on broadcast.
Okay, well then I might have been thinking it, and as my partner, you should be able to read my mind.
I apologize, but it's spot on. Like that's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah, largely, I think it's definitely like mid-range Hunter style with a little bit less emphasis on minions and a little bit more emphasis on damage from the hand.
Yeah.
Because mid-range Hunter had a little bit more beast synergy because they're really trying to leverage power spikes through cards like Houndmaster, and of course the pseudo-legendary Savannah Highmane. But in this case, a lot of the fights tend to be more about like how much damage you can set up through like a flurry of weapons and maybe a little bit of minion damage. But also you have healing, which is a little bit unprecedented, which is why you can't really truly compare it to a mid-range Hunter mirror, because a lot of times they just didn't have healing of any kind.
Yeah. But like the pace of the game, I suppose.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a big one.
Yeah, very much so. Either way, that's a little bit more of an old school comparison for people who've been playing Hearthstone for years now. But if you're kind of like more new to it, in the end, it's pretty much who can get that early game lead. As you can see, both players taking a little bit of time to address each other's minions. Cards like Soul Jayer don't feel like you want to waste too much time on. too many resources. So like while you could, try to use Soul Shear on it, I think that Monsanto is like more leaning towards a mana feed, a Panthera, or a weapon setup in this spot because the Soul Jailer isn't like naturally threatening just as a 1/3. But that's where it can be deceiving, TJ, because if you don't address the Soul Jailer, over time you realize it's done like 3 to 4 damage, and you're like, well, I actually wish I didn't let this thing live as long as it did. So Monsanto ends up going for the mana feed of Panthera, which makes sense here because he wants to keep his hand economy high. There is such thing as, I think, valuing a little bit too much on the card draw for this matchup because, if we compare it to like a mid-range battle traditionally, you don't want to worry too much about that value versus falling behind on tempo. There's been games where like I have thought I like had a really good curve, and I kept Skull Gul'dan in my opening hand because it was in the correct position. I was on coin, and I ended up never playing it the entire game. And I needed to not do that, otherwise I would have lost. And I was able to narrowly win because I was just playing every single mana crystal, trying to find ways to maximize my board presence and damage. So Monsanto does have to be mindful of that very delicate song and dance of just not getting a little too crazy with the mana cards that he's drawing. He's got a lot of value right now in his hand.
Too much, honestly. Sometimes it can be too much, right? Like sometimes you just fall too far behind and you never get to use it. Like he has 6 weapon swings in hand right now. What's the skull? Dead philosophy, sure. Like I want to do big things. I want to start doing big things. Yep, I like the swing here because he's gonna need to start getting this Eldrazi Warblades online. It looks like he's gonna be outcasting Skull from the left side, as awkward as that is, because there's actually only is 5, 6, 7 mana, -1 for the coin, 6 mana standing in his way.
Demons.
I'm trying to find a reason why I wouldn't want to play a Glavebound here. I don't think I can find one.
No, you have 2 Glavebounds. You got a hand that says, well, I want to deal damage, and once you're done dealing the damage, I got you, because you got more cards that deal damage. It's Skull Gul'dan.
Wait a second.
So this is the disadvantage. Right, I was going to say that this is definitely the disadvantage of the situation that Monsanto's in, is that he actually has a hand that can go aggressive, and it wasn't necessarily super important for him to play that mana feed of Panthera versus, like, say, having more weapon swings out, or how he fits in the dynamic of the Eldrazi Warblade, because that card can single-handedly turn that matchup around in almost any situation that you're in. Because it messes up the combat math of a lot of things. But if he does go for a Soul Shard Lapidary and there's no healing from NoHandsGamer, then yeah, there's a potential here for Monsanto to kill his opponent.
Such a beautiful shield.
Yes! Love it.
That's right. Both players just posturing for a lethal opportunity now. There's just a lot of explosiveness in this matchup.
Yeah.
Wow.
Monsanto has the Eldrazi, though.
Basically 2 choices here, which is to set up the Lapidary or to go for the Glavebound Adept.
Glavebound Adept is more power on the board, and you actually get to sink. You sink less damage into the Soul Shard Lapidary. You'd sink 6 damage into it if you played Soul Shard Lapidary. You only sink 5 damage into it by playing Glavebound, and you push the same amount, right? Actually, no, you push the same amount. So I like this line better. Now there's 12 damage on board, and Monsanto can heal for 7. So he's dead to 5 damage, and that's all he can do. So It's like NoHandsGamer has won.
There is one thing he could do, which is he could draw a card, and if he hits Blade Dance, he can still Blade Dance and clear the board with the twin slices. So it's possible. It's not ideal, but I think he's recognizing that, like, based off the way No Hands is playing, he has to have more damage in hand. It's also just really likely. I'm gonna go for the Mana Feeder Panthara, which is interesting. Start off, finds Soul Fragment, which also is a possibility. Doesn't find it. Just has to go. Now he goes at 17. And No Hands has 12, plus the Chaos Strike is 14, plus the Soul Shard Lapidary is 19. I think the only way it wasn't going to work... Actually, no, he had him covered with Kane Sunfury.
Yeah.
I was going to say if he drew his Soul Fragments, but... No Hands able to strike back, win the Demon Hunter Mirror, and, you know, when you die with 2 Skulls and Gul'dan in your hand... 3 Skulls are in the hand, and none of them got played. It just kind of shows you the nature of this matchup. Do not get baited. I did not keep Skull Gul'dan ever since I played that Mirror TJ, where I was like,
yeah,
I never played this, and I never needed to play this. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, that's one of
the.
Sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, that's one of the ways the matchup can kind of pan out, where, you know, both players just kind of draw gas. One player initiates a race, and then it just is about who has the most damage, right? Sometimes you do get those like back and forth ones where neither players are drawing damage, and there is more of a fight for board, and then Skull can sometimes matter. But I feel like one way or the other, there's either a blowout or a mid-game race like we see there. And then the third, like, you know, 10% of the time option is nobody's drawing damage, they're fighting for board, and then the Skull is what really matters. So kind of a fun one, though. I'd like Monsanto kind of that one turn realizing, like, looking through all these plays and being like, I can't sink this much damage into this. I'll fall too far behind on tempo. I have all these dead cards in my hand. I don't think I have time to cast a Skull or try and play towards a Skull or draw Soul Fragments. I just need to go and hope that my damage and the healing that I have with Eldrazi Warblades and Twin Slices next turn are better. And they weren't, so can't blame him for that.
Well, going into game number 3 here. Opening hands look pretty okay for NoHandsGamer. What I always worry about as the Priest player when you're going up against Demon Hunter is, can you find a way to stop their curve? If they find Soul Jailer, Wand Maker, Mana Feeder Panthara, Marrow Slicer, and like the Lapidary, like, what do you do? It looks like he has actually a pretty reasonable way to answer it, because he does have the Apotheosis in the wild behind him so far. Monsanto needs to find better early game drops, and this time does not find it, but he does have Blade Dance, which actually is quite important in this matchup, TJ, I find. Blade Dance is important in almost every matchup for Demon Hunter, but like against Priest, I actually think that you end up recognizing more opportunities to use in the mid game than usual, because they're looking for like Cabal Acolyte opportunities or like Apotheosis stuff, and you want to find ways to kill it without having to touch it. And Blade Dance is an excellent tool to do this.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's like keep worthy, but it's something that you know you'll need at some point. So it is like a pivotal card in the matchup. But I do think, you know, while Demon Hunter, you know, can do a lot of things to like increase their chances to win this matchup, it's as simple as like respecting Apotheosis while you can. And as soon as you can't, racing and hope they don't have it. That, you know, there's a lot of nuance in between there, but not as much as like the Priest side, where I feel like a lot of players with Priest tend to like focus too much on trying to wrestle early game board and not so much on like just worrying about their own health total and going for like these big health swings. I feel like collecting resources, pressing the hero power, and keeping your health total high, and then going for the Wild Pyromancer or Apotheosis swing is the way you win this matchup more often than not. Instead of like trying to play for tempo and using Wild Pyromancer early to try and kill off a bunch of small minions on the board. Because you can take this damage because it doesn't start ramping up for a while. And NoHandsGamer is making a very meaningful choice here by going with Wild Pyromancer. He does have Raise Dead to bring it back, which I think is why he would do this. If he didn't have Raise Dead, I would not want to throw my Wild Pyromancer out here. But it's also another... The Raise Dead would have been another spell with the Wild Pyromancer Apotheosis to gain that additional healing. Because kind of what you want to do is get to this point where you, if you have this combination in your hand, right, Wild Pyromancer Apotheosis, you can't like put your whole game plan around it, is kind of let the board build up and create a little bit of tension where you can, but let the board build up, find the resources that you know is going to deal with the board, because Demon Hunter is, you can calculate exactly how big their board can possibly get over the next few turns. And then use that to jump back up to 30 life, and they have sunk a lot of this damage and these resources into killing you, and then boom, you just out-resource them and can wrestle tempo after the fact. I feel like I see players play for just like early game board tempo too often and fall into this trap where once the damage starts piling in, then they're out of stuff. And it doesn't matter if they have the board because they can't capitalize on it.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that happen even recently, but can't remember which series maybe that happened right off the top of my head here. But kind of dialing in on this turn 4 here from No Hands, he sees his big board. Is it time for him to pull the trigger on the Cabal Acolyte? And it looks like he is.
I must consider.
And I guess he's just totally okay with whatever he ends up taking here. Just needs to stop the momentum from his opponent.
Yep. And love the use of the Raise Dead here. Instead of like coin something else, just to get the Raise Dead out of the way to guarantee that he gets a Wild Pyromancer, which is, I think, pretty crucial to the game plan with Apotheosis being in hand. You don't have to worry about sticking something on board because you know that you always have that out. Especially combined with the Shadow Word Death, you can deal with just about anything. The only thing he's really missing at this point, in order to solidify his position in the game, is a Soul Mirror to deal with a possible Soul Seologist. But again, he's got Cleric of Scales to try and find that. With so many spells being drawn from his deck already, it's getting pretty likely. So,
right.
I grow impatient.
Now, from Monsanto's perspective, he's got to figure out a way to, again, you kind of mentioned it, deal with the board without sinking too much damage into it. You want to keep pushing damage each turn and also respecting the possibility of Apotheosis being a massive punish. So Shard Shatter Mystic, awkward because it clears his own board. He's got now Draki Warblades equipped. Alright, just going to use this as an opportunity to get the Marrow Slicer up. This is the most efficient use of mana. He's not pushing damage this turn, but he's setting up for the possibility to deal a lot of damage next turn. And this may be one of those situations where you can leave a minion up, because if Apotheosis comes out on this, it's not a huge punish because you have ways to deal with it on board, and it's just a small attack minion. You haven't invested too many resources into damaging your opponent, but, you might as well just clear it off because they're probably not going to use it anyway. And maybe they get some value trades out of it or utilize some other tool in their hand besides Apotheosis. So I like the trade.
Yeah, I think it's fine as well. I generally don't want to leave Priest up with much. I want to leave them with nothing, DJ. Nothing but their hearts broken. Ends up going for Renew.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's specifically hoping to dig for here. Maybe some way to decisively answer a mid-sized threat, but he does through the Shadow Word Death. Perhaps a additional way to secure his a board advantage. Maybe he's just looking for a cheap spell to use that he would want to combine with the Wild Pyromancer, but he just did so with the Renew, so... Yeah, I'm a little intrigued. He can go ahead and play the Wild Pyromancer and Draconic Studies here, if he wants to clear off the board.
Ooh.
Whoa!
Hey, he's banking on the Wild
Baiting
Pyromancer
him.
Apotheosis.
The bait's been set, Monsanto. Will you take it?
Oh no. You don't want to draw Soul Fragments now.
Right. Still has them in the deck, but yeah, it's definitely not the ideal use of them for sure.
He's only got 2 now. He drew 2. He had 4 in his deck with 25 cards remaining and drew 2 of them. Ooh. I don't feel good.
You don't pick the wands.
Wand Maker. All right. I like the Cyclone Consume Magic. I think a lot of Demon Hunter players get tunneled on this. Consume Magic needs to be on the Apotheosis target or I'll never win. But if you like keep holding on to it, don't cycle that 1 extra card. Your smart Priest players aren't going to just, give you an Apotheosis target unless they're going for a big swing, right? And No Hands obviously holding on to a ton of resources, so just cycle it, get it out of your hand, draw a card, get further into your deck, draw more damage. Win the game before they even have a chance to cast Apotheosis.
Yeah, that's right. No hands. The bait isn't, Monsanto didn't take it. He didn't set up a big board at all. He just kind of played a little disruptive and slowly extends the board again. So no hands. What will you do in response now that he's been mana burned? Doesn't have the ability to drop the evasive Draconator, which I think is something that he was accounting for.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yep. I think it's fine to drop 1 Wild Pyromancer here because he's got the second. If he just heals there and leaves that board up, he takes more damage than he healed back up, so it makes sense to do it this way. He's at 18. I'm curious how Monsanto wants to play this because you don't want to. You have to play minions in order to deal damage, but at the same time, you with this type of game state, you kind of know with so many cards being held onto, with the Wild Pyromancer thrown out and being raised at it back, you can pretty much assume that Wild Pyromancer Apotheosis is going to be the thing that punishes you.
Wow.
If you go wide. So I'm curious what he does if he tries to play minions at the last possible moment, if he tries to set up like an OTK. If he thinks that might be a possibility.
Time grows short.
I like it. I like it a lot, and I think that it's really trying to punish what No Hands is clearly setting up to do. Like, there's no way that No Hands, the amount of tutoring that he's done, the amount of resource gathering that he has been accumulating, and the lack of meaningful extension onto the board, there's no way that Monsanto would want to extend into a big swing, right? So this is great for recognition from Monsanto, understanding the larger game plan from No Hands and not giving him an easy target. However, No Hands as well, you're gonna leave a minion on the board. Yeah, mind if I do?
Yeah.
Wow, Powered Feast on the Wild Pyromancer. A little heal for 2 and 7, back up to 24. Now Monsanto has to answer this, but he's got several ways he can.
Soul Fragments are only 2. But there is a Marl Slicer or Soul Shear to use before. So he can Marl Slicer, then Sociologist, attack into the Wild Pyromancer. 1/3/3 goes into there. 1/3/3 goes into 2/1. You have 2 more. It's one of the reasons why I just from that Cleric of Scales that NoHandsGamer played that I just would like to get Soul Mirror Just because I feel like you always need against Sociologist Militia.
Right.
Instead he picked a Renew, which got him the Power Word Feast, which helped this Wild Pyromancer be healthier. Oh,
like
okay,
Blade
so
Dance
he's
as
pushing
well.
damage. All right.
Yeah, so this is something that I wanted to talk about as well, which is that, you know, when we discussed the strength of Demon Hunter to use Blade Dance aggressively like this, there's a lot of power of just using Sociologist Militia to get past the next taunt and then push even more damage. So I actually like this line a lot, and I think that one thing that Sane was doing yesterday and like a lot of other players are trying to show is that Demon Hunter is at its best when it's threatening and it's like looming. Because No Hands now has to account for a couple of different things. He knows 2 other cards are discounted. He has to account for the 9 damage on board. So the obvious play would be an Evasive Draconid and a Shadow Word Death. But No Hands now is thinking about, does he want a Wave of Apathy and heal? And like this kind of dance is not possible if he was at a lower life total. I think that if No Hands is at like 22, you would steal every single time. But now he actually wants to set up defenses. And I think those are plays that are opened up only if you be aggressive as Demon Hunter. That makes sense to me. And now Monsanto has enough to push through with damage here with the Sociologist.
Not enough to kill. Yeah, it lines up a little bit awkwardly. Because he trades in all 3 of the soul fragments unless he wants to sink the face damage in, which he wants to. Feels like he wants to be more efficient with the face damage. It's kind of like an awkward turn. So it looks like he's not going to push any damage this turn. Oh no, he is. Okay, he's just going to trade in all the soul fragments. Okay. Which makes sense, because not really much of a point to go to play around anything else, right? Like to play into Soul Mirror more and not push damage. Especially like you mentioned, after all the tutoring he's done, he probably has answers. We can see that he doesn't, but it's possible. All right, so Skeletal Dragon, taunt with the most health, can Wave of Apathy. Crimson Hothead similarly. Except Crimson Hothead also allows him to fit in a hero power. Skeletal Dragon, though, has the benefit of maybe being able to find another dragon that can potentially bail him out. Like maybe a Murazon that can catch an Eldraki Warblade, or an Alexstrasza, or a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, but it would not be active. He still has 2 Cobalt Smokins, 2 Sethic Veil Weavers in the deck, so still a good amount of duplicates left.
Well, Kane
That'll do
Sunfury
it.
makes short work of this. Now that's going to be game number 3. And overall, I like the way this was set up. No Hands definitely tried to be very cute about a lot of stuff. So, you know, when I say being cute, like he's just trying to say like, oh, you know, I'll give you opportunities to overextend it. But, you know, Monsanto chose to be very patient about it and overall did an excellent job navigating through the early mid-game to set himself up for success, and is now up 2-1. 1 game away from going through to the top 4 on Championship Sunday.
Yeah, I will say that I think that, you know, overall, I think that's a case of Monsanto just playing that game super well. But there might have been some opportunities for NoHandsGamer to be a little more efficient. You mentioned, you know, kind of trying to be cute with things and having to go off with the Wild Pyromancer Apotheosis Powered Feast play that didn't impact the board whatsoever. And it killed off, like, it didn't even kill off anything from the other side. And he kind of like built up this game plan to get to that point, but then was forced to go for it because that's the only game plan he gave himself. It's hard to kind of go back in that situation and say, oh, well, just, don't play for the board as much, press the hero power more, because if you, just heal up and deal with the board in little increments, and maybe go for that swing either earlier or heal more and go for it later, who knows if it changes the outcome, but it's been a while since I've seen a perfectly played priest game against Demon Hunter, and I think the closest example to it was in Europe today. It was Bunny Hopper versus A-Rock, I think. Whereas Bunny Hopper's priest play against the Demon Hunter was just spectacular. And that's, those types of games are like my my guiding light when it comes to that matchup in particular, because I think that managing your resources and incremental healing, being good at that is so important in the matchup, so you don't get put into situations where you leave yourself vulnerable to anything. But Monsanto did, I think, force him by being aggressive to use that Wild Pyromancer in a way that he had not planned to, and then kind of just put him in a checkmate situation where he had answers to whatever No Hands was going to throw at him. So now it's time to get into Rogue versus Rogue. Let's see it.
Well, Rogue versus Rogue is, we've seen it before. It can be quite convoluted with some of the stuff that can be generated, but not really with that. Colossus of the Moon. So it looks like finally No Hands breaks the trend that we've been seeing of a bunch of 2-drops coming out of that Pharaoh Cat. And overall, like, Monsanto right now has to find a way to eventually win back the board. The first real good proactive thing that he can play is Janus Barov, and that's going to be a little bit of time until then.
Yeah. Danny's got the nuts.
Oh, yeah.
How could he lose?
He's got a pair of Colossus. We call that the nuts.
If this gets to the late game, No Hands can't lose. All he has to do is get to turn 10 without taking game-ending damage with 2 dead cards in hand. At some point, bait out both Blackjack Stunners and Shadow Steps, and not let Monsanto get Freezing Trap from a possible Shadow Jewel Hernar. Easy.
Very easy.
And have a turn where he can safely spend all of his mana playing a minion that does not have an immediate impact on the board. Easy.
Easy. This is an opportunity for No Hands to get very far ahead. Okay, well, Monsanto finds the backstab. So, question, is there ever an opportunity to play this early secret passage instead of just trying to, like, do random stuff? I'm thinking no for the obvious reason, but, like, I'm kind of wondering if there's ever a case to make for that. Just because it feels so bad. I guess you do have Janus Barov, so you just kind of have to bite the bullet for maybe one more turn, but is that tempo that you can afford to seize here?
I just don't know what I'd be looking for. I guess you can coin Secret Passage, and then at the very least you can play Evil Miscreant. I guess a Secret would also be good here. Another Secret. Shadow Jeweler? Hernar? At least this gives some form of value from the Secret Passage. You get a Legendary. Reliquary of Soul is really the only one that makes any sort of sense there.
Right. Well, from this point on, No Hands finds a secret. So the Shadow Jewel Hanar does have some synergy here, and that's the only playable combination that's guaranteed to land something nice versus the Primordial Studies could theoretically whiff, but unlikely to.
Never surrender because it's cheap, and Rogue usually has to play spells in order to fight back on board. So that makes sense.
Tempo option.
Also, yeah, it just allows you to continue the train with Shadow Jewel Hernar going into the next turn. It's starting to look awkward for Monsanto. Without that coin usage, he's a little bit behind on tempo, behind on mana, since No Hands will be able to play Jandis first. Can fight back here though with the Underbelly Fence and Shadow Step. He paused here after he played this. No Hands secret spread is double ambush, double dirty tricks, Intrepid Initiate, and Eviscerates in the deck. So getting some burn.
So many options.
Well, it's not ideal, but Monsanto finally able to get ahead on board, and now No Hands able to seize it through the Jandis Barov. Let's see what he gets off of them. Probably looking for just highest stats, some rushers, anything that can help threaten his opponent. Well, finds Booty Bait Bodyguard and the Malagos aspect of magic. Most likely going to try to choose whatever is inconvenient for Monsanto to deal with. Probably. Actually, it's kind of interesting here. Would you choose the bodyguard? Because it's like kind of vulnerable as a taunt, anyways. And then Monsanto finds Totem Goliath. Hey. Made the right call.
He got him.
Got him.
Totem Goliath is interesting because it presents like this kind of annoying board. With the totems, because Rogue can make use of, they like to have the value of the healing totem. They can make use of spell damage with Backstab, with Vendetta. Blood Mage Thalnos.
Does do a 3 damage backstab. But first, No Hands going to look into see what else he can get here. Man, I just remember the days where Rogue loved to play Phantom Knives with Blood Mage Thanos. Just seems so far away, but funny enough, it does seem like a combination that that No Hands would want right now.
Or
Blade the ability to deal with all of his wide board. Cobalt is better tempo than Never Surrender.
I mean, No Hands, because of these double Colossus of the Moon, is quickly running out of just straight playable cards. He's got a Never Surrender in hand, which, without Shadow Jewel or Hanar, isn't doing that much, and a Titanic Lackey. So, I mean, there is that world, though. He holds on until Colossus of the Moon comes down, but Monsanto has double Blackjacks in her hand. And he bounced back to hand completely unplayable. A 1-mana card just shuts it off. That's insane. For Monsanto, it seemed like he was behind on value early on in the game, but that Secret Passage actually worked out quite well because it gave him some things to do on a turn where he didn't have that much to do. So,
right.
Sometimes you do need to find those kinds of uses.
Yeah, that makes sense. Monsanto looks for a dragon, finds a Twin Tyrant, able to use it for tempo later, but for now seems to need to prioritize fighting on back onto the board, and now we kind of get to the point where every single board looks like a Wave of Apathy Soul Mirror play that happened the turn before it. No Hands still with unplayable Reborns, just to show you why Colossus of the Moon can be considered a bad pickup. Sure, situationally, there's moments where it feels pretty good to play it if your opponent can't remove it easily. But yeah, this is generally why. Titanic, Lackey, Eviscerate, and you know, Monsanto's done such a good job not activating the secret too that it's causing No Hands to have weaker turns while he just prioritizes minion play. It's very solid.
Yeah, it's he understands now No Hands is playing primarily on the right side of his hand.
Too soon.
So he knows that these reborn cards are expensive, or you know, not playable, and Dirty Tricks is up, so he's trying not to give him resources because his turns have been relatively weak.
Well.
And go with Questing Adventure here and like Pharaoh Cat, but beyond that, unless he hits a really solid reborn minion, it feels tough for him to navigate this turn without it being too weak without using a spell.
Oh. Just a little bit off from being able to play the Winged Guardian. I like the idea, though. There's a big range of Reborn minions that he could have played, which would have been solid, but... yeah, is it time for him to activate that Dirty Tricks? I feel like we've gotten to this point without actually doing so. Also testing for secrets. Repentance tested. Noble Sacrifice test. This is a test for Redemption. Wow, willing to float 4 mana right now. Wow.
He plays it 1/2. That's the only thing he can do.
These
Even with the dagger up, he still
so
floats 5 mana. Oh, I mean,
These turns
Monsanto
are
has to have a hard read on this hand. He's got to know that it's either Generous Mummy or double Colossus of the Moon, and even then, like I would have probably played Generous Mummy because you can't afford to give up this much at the board and float that much mana. Oh my goodness. What's also crazy is that this Golem that's been illusion for many turns just keeps hitting NoHandsGamer. Yeah. Just refusing to trade in. Oh, man. Like, what's stopping Monsanto here from just playing Winged Guardian and hitting face again for 5?
Yeah, these turns, because they're trying to play so disruptive and also a combination of No Hands just drawing complete air, it's just leading to such an awkward game state. This is such an unusual situation for a lot of decks. However, for Rogue, you find yourself doing this fairly often, which is what makes it even funnier. It's just like, what is even happening in this game, right? You don't really truly understand. You're just playing a bunch of Shaman cards, randomly generated dragons, and yet, despite getting into this stage where like both players would love to be aggressive, No Hands again picks up nothing here. He just picks up Plagiarize. Despite picking up all of this, there's just not really enough to do anything here. Okay, next turn. Next turn is the promised turn, TJ. Finally play the Colossus of the Moon. But now Monsanto would be ready to sap it and make it completely unplayable.
I feel so bad for No Hands in this game because he's just been given nothing. It's not even like Monsanto's, hand has been like this hand that just is out of control good. Monsanto's just had a decent rogue hand. And he's killing No Hands really slowly. He hasn't even put a clock on him because he's not playing Questing Adventurer. And No Hands still hasn't been able to contest anything because the Feral Cats, both Colossus of the Moon. And there's no incentive for him to, no reason for him to play a spell. He can play Plagiarize, but like you said, Blackjack Stunner's there. With a secret in hand. Just waiting for the killing blow. I think this might be a checkmate situation.
Yeah, this has been a very unfortunate pan out for No Hands, but also really well executed on Monsanto's end just to try and slowly grind NoHandsGamer out. And that'll do it. Monsanto wins 3-1 over NoHandsGamer and advances to Sunday's top 4 with a very unusual Rogue mirror that kind of showcases the best and the worst parts of Rogue simultaneously. So, well done.
Well done. Yeah. And even though it wasn't there in this series, you have to commend Monsanto for taking a risk in a very important week of Grandmasters and bringing that that unique Pain Warrior, and because he did pick up a nice win with it in the series against Language Hacker. So the ultimate test will come tomorrow to see if he can make that final push and head on to the World Championship. But so far, so good for Monsanto with the risk in his lineup. And No Hands is not of it yet. The benefit of his number 2 seed is a good round robin stage. He will move down to the decider match to face the winner of ETC versus Language Hacker, which will be coming up next. So he's got one more chance to make it through to that top 4. And, those types of games, those are tough, right? I feel like in the Demon Hunter game, he had a decent game plan. It just, Monsanto navigated that super well and had the resources to be able to do it. In that Rogue game, you're not going to get double Colossus of the Moon very often with your